Now, recently, MSNBC's host Rachel Maddow did a segment where she talked about donations in the Democratic primary. So now she specifically focused in on female donors. Now, I want to show you some of that coverage that she had done, and then I'm going to break it down, specifically something that she leaves out. Let's take a look.
There is only one candidate among all of the declared Democrats who thus far has raised more money from female donors than from male donors. Kirsten Gillibrand is the only one. Her donors are 48% male, 52% female. Other than that, every other candidate in the race skews, even slightly, but skews more male in terms of the donations that they have received thus far. I mean, most voters are women. Most Democratic voters are women. Most Democratic donors are women, right? And so this is interesting. In a race when you've got a half dozen top-tier Democratic female candidates who are running, almost all but one of the candidates are raising more money from men so far than they are raising from women. And the other end of the spectrum, Kirsten Gillibrand's doing the best in terms of targeting female donors, but look at the other end of the spectrum. Just strikes me as unsustainable, right? I mean, right now, both Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg, they're doing great in terms of donations overall and buzz and polls and press. Like, they're doing great. But look at them. Both of them are 2-to-1 in the gender balance of their fundraising. Both of them are raising twice as much money from male donors as they are from female donors. 66 and 67% of your donations are from dudes? Dude. Bernie Sanders had a gender split in his fundraising when he ran in 2016 as well. That split that you're seeing for him thus far for his first quarter for 2020 is worse than the gender split that he had in 2016.
All right, so that's Rachel basically sourcing her numbers, and they are correct numbers from Open Secrets. Now, Open Secrets collects the information. They do a great job. Their reporting is accurate. However, in that segment, Maddow misses something really important. She misses some context. Now, here's from the report. The 5 Democratic women in the 2020 presidential race had raised more money from women donors than the 11 Democratic men did in the first quarter of 2019, $7.4 million to $7.35 million. Now, again, these are correct. However, you have, okay, so let me give you some examples first, right? So now, I think part of that is you've got Elizabeth Warren, who's coming up with fantastic policies, and then you have Kamala Harris, who generates buzz among some of the more centrist or slightly center-left leaning Democrats who are more interested in having a woman. Now, Maddow looks at this, and she says, well, obviously, Bernie Sanders, it's unsustainable. Bernie Sanders, and of course they're going to throw in Pete Buttigieg and be like, well, I mean, it's unsustainable. Look, women hate Bernie Sanders. He does terrible with women voters, therefore implying that he can't win because, as she points out, oh, look, well, a lot of the Democratic base, they're women. In fact, Democratic voters, Democratic, donors, mostly women. So if you're not doing well with women, you're not going to do very well in this primary, right? Now, here's what she leaves out of this report. The Center for Responsive Politics did an analysis of itemized contributions to candidates who filed in the first quarter and raised more than $100,000. These itemized contributions are contributions over $200, which gives gender data only for large donations. They also noted that electability, albeit a quality given generously to men running for office and earned by women, has been a pillar for primary voters and donors in presidential elections. Who that leads donors to is still to be determined, but where women are putting their money provides insight. That is true, but only if you have all the relevant information. In this case, this only tracks women, female donors giving over $200 to a political candidate. Now, for somebody like Kirsten Gillibrand, who appeals to the more moderate, centrist, establishment, corporate-friendly wing of the party, you're going to have people who are more affluent giving over $200. Again, this probably includes bundlers and larger donors. Again, if it's over $200, that counts quite a bit, right? What they ignore here are the small donors. There are no small donors. There are no donors under $200. Now, who leads in small donors currently? Well, that would be Senator Bernie Sanders. Was there any mention of that in that video that I showed you from Rachel Maddow? Is there any mention of that caveat? I didn't see one. Now, Sanders' communication director, Ariana Jones, also apparently did not see that, and she noted on Twitter that, quote, out of the 525,000 people who contributed to Bernie Sanders' campaign in the first quarter, 46% of them were women. In fact, it is virtually certain that more women have donated to our campaign than any other when you take the total number of donors. Not the percentage, but the number, and that's very important. Now, that 46% is wildly different than the 33% of donors over $200 that were cited to giving to Bernie Sanders. And again, there will be different numbers because they've included all the different donations, especially small donors. Now, people who give to Bernie Sanders usually give on average this quarter of around $24. They are not counted. They are not counted. Not only that, but of course, the number of donors that you have matters quite a bit. Senator Sanders massively leads the field a number of donors in this race. Number of small donors. He has the most donors who are giving very small amounts. Now, a higher percentage of women giving over $200 to Kirsten Gillibrand doesn't mean as much if she only has a fraction of the donors giving to her as compared to another candidate. Now, why would Rachel Maddow leave out that important context? Did she forget? I don't think so. Rachel Maddow is a very smart person. She is incredibly intelligent, and so I don't think that she would leave something that important out. So that leads me to the other conclusion, that she left it out on purpose. Maybe to make a point or to reinforce a narrative that Bernie Sanders does not appeal to women. Now, white older women for sure would fit that, right? They don't support Bernie Sanders, older white women, not in the highest numbers as younger women and women of color who are also younger, right? Now, those older, more affluent women, they're more likely not to like Bernie Sanders. They're more likely to have voted, for example, for Hillary Clinton or supported Hillary Clinton during the 2016 campaign. And when you go to, or when you talk about people who have supported Hillary Clinton, white affluent women, well, they're a little angry at Bernie Sanders. Just a little bit. But again, young women, women of color, people who are in lower socioeconomic brackets, they do support Senator Sanders by a larger margin than those who are more affluent. And so the problem with this, and the reason that we're calling it out, is that this looks like erasure. You are erasing people, young women and women of color who support Senator Bernie Sanders. You are erasing them. Now, Rachel Maddow, I used to respect her as a journalist, right? I remember when she reported on Flint, when she talked about the loss of democracy here in Michigan, I had a lot of respect for her. But last few years, I don't know what happened, but she has basically resorted to doing, I think, disingenuous, dishonest smears on Bernie Sanders. And I can't imagine why. Maybe she's doing it because she doesn't like Bernie Sanders specifically. And that, again, I guess that would make her not very progressive because the appeal of Sanders has always been about his policy. And then it could also be orders from MSNBC. And you guys remember, maybe you don't, but I remember back in 2016 or later on, Ed Schultz, the late Ed Schultz, being told not to cover Bernie, specifically by the leader of MSNBC, Phil Griffin. Don't cover Bernie, whatever you do. Don't cover Bernie. Don't cover his rallies. You're going to go cover Donald Trump. You're going to cover someone else. And so why would MSNBC do that? It's because they want someone who is establishment friendly. somebody who won't rock the boat, someone who won't destroy their method of fundraising. And Kirsten Gillibrand is pretty much perfect for them. She offers no change. She is a bit of a moderate centrist. And so here we go. We have, I think, the obvious choice of MSNBC establishment media in either Joe Biden and, of course, Rachel Maddow. We're talking about somebody like Gillibrand or Kamala Harris. So MSNBC, though, is working for their own financial interests. And apparently, unfortunately, so is Rachel Maddow. What a sad place for someone to be at who I think was, who I used to respect immensely. But I guess this is what happens when you sell out. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.